Okay, I've got multiple things to talk about. Um, First of all, I switched this. This is not the piece you saw me work on last time. This is the piece that I worked on the very first time that had the glare on it. And I've done more to it to make it like the other one. It's just a little higher contrast. Uh, So, quite frankly, I thought it looked a little better, but it's also just easier to see the shapes because of the contrast. That's number one. Two, when you're working on the portraits, you're probably best off having a slight slant. See, I've got this board propped up. I don't know what it is, 10 degrees or something. 10 or 15. And that's because that little bit of gravity pulling this way will help you from keep you from getting too many back runs. You'll have a little bit more control over it. Some things I want the water to do its thing and kind of meander where in odd places, and so I want to work flat. And sometimes I want to work at a little bit of an angle, and sometimes I like a lot of an angle. You get totally different effects. But for this, I think you'll be more successful if you work like this with just a little bit of tilt under it. Now, I got this flat overnight, and let me point out, when you're working with watercolor and you've gotten it all wet, like on the face here in the middle, and then you use the hair dryer and you dried it and whatever, this part shrinks a little bit. And this part out here that didn't get as much of that treatment doesn't shrink so much. And so you start to get buckles. Also, the back side of the paper doesn't shrink as much. And so your paper tends to curl this way. So what I did was, and I do this on most of my paintings at some point because I want them to lay flat when I'm showing them. If I was going to frame a painting, this is certainly what I would go through, but I kind of like to do it even when I'm just working with them at home. So I turn it over, I wet down the back liberally, and I dry it with the hairdryer on the back side. Then I wet it down again, I let it soak in, and then I put it between two pieces of sheetrock and I leave it overnight, and it just comes out perfect. You can do this with 140 pound too. It works really well. So I did it for this in part. You might not need to. Usually, I don't do that in class, obviously, but also because I wanted it to lay flat for the video. Okay. Then let's go to this. Okay. People who have been in my portrait class have one of these, but a whole lot of you are trying this out for the first time and you don't. So I will make copies of this and mail it out in the next mail out for those of you who, if you still want to do portraits. Although I think we're going to do a horse next time first. Well, that made a lot of sense, didn't it? Talk about staying on the subject. Okay, but if you look at this, you can see that the artist has sort of divided the face up into some flat planes. And I really like this concept. I both like the look of it and I like the way it helps you think about the shapes in the face. Once you're familiar with this and you start to kind of see faces this way, you'll make a lot fewer of the most common beginner mistakes. Okay, so that goes out next time I do a mail out. So you will see, looking at this, let me make sure it's in the right place. Okay. You will see when looking at this that I have I have a few crisp edges and I have some soft edges. Those crisp edges, along with everything else, you would think that someone older with a few sags and bags would look worse if you had sharp edges. Actually, it kind of improves us. I kind of like it. Oh, by the way, here's the other thing. Okay, so this is just an example. You can see, here's where I was going to do something with this, I never have. You can see where some of this is really, you can see the edges on it, but you can see the different layers and the way the colors stacked on top of the different layers, the color changes. It's sort of like looking at layers of stained glass, and not quite that dramatic, but a little bit that way. So I like this kind of look, and what I try to do is I try to achieve a much more subtle version of that with the face, because I think that makes a more entertaining visual experience. So we have been working with New Gamboge and Quinn Coral. And I use the coral because it's kind of on the bright side. But now, always be prepared. Have your stuff all cleaned out and ready. You're making a video, Ann. Oh. Okay, let's get this out of here. So I am going to work with phthalo green. That has become one of my favorites for this kind of thing. There's a lot of ways that I stack layers for portraits, but I'm going to show you what I've been doing more frequently lately. It just, you know, I'm having a spell of this. So the thing is that if you're new to this and you're worried about mistakes, as quite frankly we all are, I'm worried about mistakes right now. Because if I blow this and I'm on, you know, camera, well, of course, I can edit it out, can't I? Okay. So the thing is that you could also use Viridian, which is much more user-friendly and will come up more easily. Of course, you can overwork it more easily too, and it doesn't have the zing and the brightness, but you know, it's one way to do it. So I'm back here to this thing. By the way, I couldn't make that stuff stay on the other day, but when I left some on for a week, some of it kind of etched itself down in this plastic. Y'all remember the plastic from last time. Okay, so let's do a little bit of this. Oh, gee. Like I said, I'm prepared, always prepared. Here it went. Okay, so let's just plot out a few. Oh, no, wait. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of this phthalo green on what's maybe going to be a black shirt. I don't really know what it's going to be. I can tell you this. If your painting is not quite optimal, a little pattern in the background will work great. If you have a lot of wrinkles, a little pattern on your shirt will actually help distract from them. You'll actually be better looking wearing pattern, believe it or not. Okay, but so I'm going to take my phthalo green and I'm going to, you can see that I've got it pretty watery. Let's see what it looks like on here. Let's just try it out on the shirt to see what phthalo green looks like layered on top. There's going to be hair there too. Layered on top of the other two colors. And I don't want to do this too neatly because I like to see it do that kind of thing. It just gives me pleasure. And if you are enjoying part of what's happening while you're painting, you'll get better at painting faster. You really will. So enjoy yourself while you can. And I didn't mean while you can before the virus gets you. Or maybe I did. So, see, a flat brush works great for that. I think it's almost easier to keep a steady hand with a flat brush. I suppose that's just my imagination. Let's see. There's the... Okay, let's do that. Okay, so you can see that's pretty green, okay? So I really don't want my face to be that green. But I like it here. And you can see that the green over the peaches, which they should cancel out and get pretty dull. If you mixed them together, you would get a pretty dull color. Oh, I know. Let's try that. Here, let's see if I'm right. Okay, I'll put some green over here, and I'll put some of my peachy mixture over here, and I'll mix them together, and I'm going to get that. Well, that's not too bad. It's a nice kind of olivey whatever, but you could see that this is much brighter than this. The other advantage is it has variation in it. Some places have more red, some places have more green, so it becomes more interesting. If I painted this down, it would be all just this, and you can see there it's a duller color. Now, there's nothing wrong with dullness sometimes, but that's not what I'm going for on the face right now. Sometimes the faces can just get too dull and muddy. So what I'm going to do is stop and dry this, and then we're going to work with this and plan out some shapes for the green.